What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 62 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I, of course, am your host, Kyle Roscoe, and we have a really good show coming up for you guys this week, covering the Early Pick5 at Oaklawn Park, starting off their Rebel Stakes Day and all the big stakes that they have going on Saturday. Guys, it's going to be a great show. Welcome in. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I see a lot of people in the comments. I'll get to those in a second, but of course we have to go over some peripherals first. But this past week we had of course the big man Sierra Leone winning the Risen Star Stakes, which obviously is huge for the podcast, but honestly just huge for the Kentucky Derby race in general. That's probably the first horse who's solidified, knock on wood, everything stays right and healthy, the first horse in the gates of the Kentucky Derby. So it's a huge point for the podcast, but also a huge point in the start for the race to the gates of the Kentucky Derby. And on Monday, we covered that on Horsin Around. If you don't know, we have a newer show. It's not so much brand new anymore. We're at 9 episodes, but every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Horsin Around, recap stakes from the weekend and topical discussion with co-hosts and fans of the podcast. So if you want to get in on an episode of Horsin Around, please email Howard at hkravitzhorse@gmail.com, and he will definitely get you scheduled in. We'd love to obviously discuss with you guys just as much as we love to discuss with us. But as you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen there, guys, bettinandboozin@gmail.com. Please email me with any questions, comments, concerns you might have. Also, please go down below the video player and like and subscribe. It is the best way to help out this podcast. And it really helps, and it pushes us out into the YouTube algorithm to show many like-minded individuals like yourself of why you come to watch the HHH Racing Podcast. So please go down below again, like and subscribe. And I'll continue to go here. Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor. If you're more of an audio listener, we post every single episode that is aired on the HHH Racing Podcast channel to wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor, of course, being the biggest. And guys, HHH Racing Podcast, the Power Picks, guys, still going extremely strong. $2.20 all-time ROI, and we're almost to 530 picks. That's over 2.5 years of being in profit. And that's only for $4 a weekend, guys. $15.99 a month is how it's billed on Patreon. But if you guys are not subscribed to one of the cheapest and most profitable pick sheets in all of horse racing, you are missing out. Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, that link is also in the description. But guys, real quick, as I'll bring on my co-host first, and then we'll talk about the big thing that happened over this past week, as I'm sure you already saw in the chat from the boss himself. But we'll go over here real quick from the West Coast, now University of Kentucky, Noah Maher, and from right around Chicago, but now at Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Boys, what's going on?
Good to be
What's
here.
up?
And as the silence takes over, the awkward silence as per usual. But anyway, guys, as you guys know, of course, and many of our listeners know, but if you guys don't know, Monday launched the second edition of the HHH Racing Podcast merch store, and is the first time that Bettin N Boozin has been featured on the merch store itself. And I'll show it obviously on screen here. I'll start off with hhhracingpodcast.com, guys. It's the best way to find out stuff about us, find previous editions of the Power Picks tip sheet, anything like that. But you also see a new banner that got added on. It's the HHH Racing Podcast merch store. It'll bring you to here. You can either click right on this button, or at the top of the screen, there's a banner that's there, and you'll open the podcast merch store, and it brings you right to this. So, guys, really high quality stuff. Howard and I were talking this entire time. Last year was good, but we wanted to make it higher quality for you guys to really kind of bring in what, if we wanted to wear it, we would hope you guys would want to wear it as well. So, hats, t-shirts, hoodies, polos, quarter zips, even koozies, guys, with the B&B logo on the back of that as well. I'm just super excited for it. The Nike Dry Fit polo, granted, is a little bit more pricey, but I was going back and forth on this. Was if people were going to pay $60 for a cheaper polo, I figured they would be willing to spend the extra $20 and get a really, really nice quality polo. So the Nike Dry Fit there for the polo. The quarter zip, the hoodies are really nice. Again, we all previewed these beforehand, so we made sure that they are really good quality. And I'm super, super happy with the way that they turned out. Again, HHHRacingPodcast.com, but it is also in the top of the description of this video. So please, please, please go out there and get your HHH Racing Podcast and Bettin N Boozin merch today. Like the man himself, Matt Miller, already said, that was actually the wrong one. He bet me if I would say the word. I'm not going to say it, Matt, but he said, ordered my B&B hoodie last night. Stuff in the store looks really cool. Like I said, Matt, thanks again. I really appreciate that. Like I said, I'm very happy with the way the merch turned out. And I'm sure you probably saw my cart as I opened the merch store. It is pretty pricey up there. But again, if I'm going to wear all of it, if you guys are going to wear all of it, of course, I'm going to wear all of it as well. But guys, we're going to get right into it here. We're not going to waste too much more time. But Katie, of course, and Katie says, buy the merch, guys. Really appreciate Katie popping in here. HHH, of course, Howard himself comes in here. There's a big purchase yesterday. Oh, big purchase from the online store. It's flying off the shelves, guys. Get yours today, of course. Like I said, we're really proud of it. And you're really in the first 10 minutes, Matt. I wanted to throw it at least once in there for you. But 7 minutes and 45 seconds in. But we're going to get right into the handicapping, guys. Not going to waste any more time here with babbling. It starts, of course, we're covering the early pick 5 at Oaklawn Park, guys. And it, of course, starts in race number 1. And this sequence might not have, the stakes races or anything like that. But this sequence is really interesting. There's a lot of different ways you can go. A lot of higher priced horses that personally I am interested in, both on top and underneath. And I'm sure the guys can also attest to that. And we all have our own reasons for that as well. But guys, I'm going to switch over to the Equibase here. Race number 1 is an allowance optional claiming $100,000. Guys, there's not a single race in this sequence worth less than $100,000. And that could go for the entire day. Just absolutely absurd purses at Oaklawn as always. But a field of 7 kicks us off here in race number 1 with the morning line favorite being the number 4, Imperial Gun for Gaff Leone and Steve Asmussen. Number 7, Blown Cover for Torres and Cox. Second choice at 2-1. And the number 6, Footprint with BJ Hernandez and Kenny McPeak rounding out the top 3 at 5-2. And guys, I'll put the picks on the screen right now. And actually, those are not my picks. I actually switched some stuff around. So we actually are all going with different horses on top. I ended up switching the 4 and the 7 as I went through my handicapping. I usually like to go through one time early, and then I'll go one right before the show to see if I really confirm my opinions. But Charlie, you are going with the morning line favorite, the number 4, Imperial Gun. So I'll let you go first as to why the favorite is going to win in this race. And Noah and I are both wrong. And obviously, Noah, I'll let you go second to talk about your pick, the 6. But Charlie, what'd you like most about Imperial Gun?
Yeah, so Noah and I were actually kind of discussing this race because I was kind of back and forth between going 4-6 or 6-4. Ultimately, for me, those are obviously the 3 favorites. Those are going to be the horses taking all the money. I just felt the 6, even though I like the out of distance, might just have too much to do. And as much as I love my closers, I just don't want to take the risk of needing a horse to do that much work. I think the 4 could honestly, I don't think this horse needs to be on the lead. We kind of seen with only 2 races, 2 very different races. Obviously, on debut, obviously, granted it was a fast pace, but the horse was 13 lengths off the lead and cut it to 3. And then next time out, it was like a length or 2 off the lead and then gets on the lead and wins going away. So I like that versatility that we've already seen early on. Obviously, Gaff Leone pairing up with Asmussen is nice. And I just think it sets up nice. But yeah, so for me, I just think it's the smarter bet out of them. And, from a value perspective, I mean, I know there isn't too much there, but I feel like honestly between 9-5, 5-2, 2-1, I think they all should be pretty similar in price. So I feel like you just kind of got to, take a stand on one of them. And for me, I'm actually very curious, Kyle, and I'll let you touch on it in a moment. But I'm curious what you like about the 7, because, for me, I get that it's Cox. I just think the horse is going to take way too much money. I don't like the value at 2-1. And I don't know. I also just didn't want to go all chalk. I thought, my boy Rocco Bowen's on the 3, and that horse is fast. So I just thought in case that horse – I don't think the horse will get loose on the lead, but I just figured in case one of the speed horses is able to, shock and do something, I would rather go with a 15-1 underneath that could surprise or stay up there than go with all 3 chalk. But that's kind of how I saw this race.
I'll tell you exactly why I like the 7, but no, I'll go to you first. I don't have Footprint anywhere, guys, and there is a little bit of a reasoning for that, but I could be completely wrong. Noah, you have this horse on top. Charlie has this horse in second. McPeak's, talk about having a really good meet. McPeak's not really, especially in the past year, he's really kind of been in that little, not really a slump, but he's only winning, that 9-10% range. Obviously, you see in 2023, won at 13%. Now it's Oaklawn. He's 16 for 71. I mean, he's winning at 23%.
Yeah, he is doing really well. It's funny that you mentioned that, Charlie, because I was kind of in the same boat. I just kind of threw the 7 just because to me the numbers were a little respectable. But when I watched the races, Kyle, you'll have to kind of tell me different. But I wasn't really thrilled. And the 4 is definitely logical too. I've got the 4 in second. I just went with the 6 just because in that last race he had probably 4 or 5 lengths of trouble, and he was coming late too. So I thought that effort looked a lot better visually than it did on paper. And I think in the last race they went a mile. I think the 16th can really only help. And he's been in some decent races too. 2 back in the Gun Runner was lost to Track Phantom. I think he just kind of wasn't really involved that day. I mean, he was 50-1. But I think BJ hopping back on, I'm kind of hoping that he's not too far back. You see 3 back at Churchill. He was a little bit closer. So I'm hoping, with the smaller field, he's not going to have too much work to do.
Yeah, and that was my thing. That's why I didn't like him. I don't think there's really as much speed as this horse needs by any means. Granted, this horse was pretty close in a non-losers of 2 at Churchill. So maybe this horse can be a little bit more forwardly placed, but if anything of those last 2 is reminiscent of this race, there's no, this horse is going to be nowhere near the front. He's probably going to be the only one that's way far back. A lot of these horses like to be in mid-pack. They're not necessarily speed balls, not really speed ball, but the 4 is going to be forwardly placed. The 3 is going to be a little bit forwardly placed. I picked the 7, guys. And there's one thing, granted, I know it was off the turf race, but let's not sugarcoat. This horse lost to Maycox Bay last time out, and Maycox Bay was all in for oh my gosh, what's the stakes race that was it? I don't know if it was the Risen. I think he was on track for the Risen Star, and then ended up scratching with an illness or something like that. So this horse is extremely well meant for Stidham. Granted, the 95 out of nowhere, but losing to Maycox Bay is nothing short. This horse was favored over Maycox Bay last time out, and I've talked about this in the past, guys, of looking at the time form numbers relative to the buyer numbers and see how they stack up. This obviously you see the pace scenario right here. They have the 4 going after the lead. 7 is, I'm going to assume the 7 is going to sit most likely off of the 4, and my hope go by at the top of the stretch. See, the number 4 has 100 last time out. Kind of got a rail trip, and I mean, realistically got the best trip out of everyone, just sitting right in behind the speed. Obviously did it very well, but the perfect trip angle has to be respected in that regard. And last time out, losing to Maycox Bay by 10 lengths, still got a 105 time form, still on that constant improve as we continue to see. And if this horse continues to take another step forward while already being 5 points ahead of the 4 on time forms perspective, just based on figures, Blown Cover could be just honestly the faster horse. And like I said, I could be wrong. The horse could just flatten out, but I think drawing the outside post, getting to sit off the 4, in my mind, is how I see it going. With Cox, Torres, Spendthrift, I just feel like this horse is extremely well meant and could sit a very nice trip. But again, I could be wrong. I don't think this horse is going to take as much money as you think. I think this Asmussen runner's going to get a lot of respect off of this 80 buyer, and obviously Kenny McPeak and Footprint are going to take a decent amount of money as well, but I will think it's going to be just the 4 and the 7 vying for favoritism. As you obviously, Noah has the 4 and the 7. I went the number 5, Seize the Gray, in second. 4th in the Iroquois behind West Saratoga, Risk It, and Liberal Arts. Liberal Arts is really the only one that's come back to run well. Beat Dornock all the way back at Saratoga in 23. Granted, obviously that was 6 months ago during the 2-year-old year, and obviously Dornock's come back to be very, very good. D. Wayne kind of put this horse on the back burner for a little while after the Keeneland race, gave this horse a little bit of time to develop. Now coming back at Oaklawn, ran a really nice 1:03. I feel like this horse could be off the layoff exactly what this horse needs to be, filled out, grown up a little bit more. And I think this horse will sit a nice trip. That if the 4 does give out on the rail, who's going to be the horse that's going to sit mid-pack to come up and maybe grab second if the 7 comes and wins. And I think Seize the Gray is that exactly that horse. And, this horse, since my racehorse, will take a pretty decent amount of money. So that's really, all the rest of the horses didn't really faze me that much at all. Obviously, you have the 1 for Riley Mott, the 2 for Mike Maker, just looking a little bit slow on the numbers. This race for the 3, Charlie has in third, obviously puts this horse into contention with a 79, but then comes back to run a 44 at the same exact. Never wasn't respected off that effort either as well. So that was a little bit of a red flag for me. Obviously, Imperial Gun sees the great footprint and blown cover. But guys, we're gonna move on from this race here. I'm sure a lot of us see it as a 3-horse race between the 7, 6, and 4, albeit I have the 5 in second, but this is the smaller field out of the entire sequence that we're going to touch on. I'm going 7-5-4. Charlie's going 4-6-3. And Noah's going 6-4-7. Guys, going to switch over to race number 2 here, but not before I take a look at the chat. Let's take a look and see who's here now. Ray Comley says, my likes haven't been registering. You kind of have to refresh because mine does the same thing, is that if it stays at the number and if you refresh it, the number continues to go up. So make sure you're refreshing before that. And Charles B, of course, says that's McPeak's go-to jockey. That being, I don't know why my DRF is having trouble loading nowadays. It's really kind of annoying, to be honest. With BJ Hernandez, he does ride a lot with BJ as you take a look at his he has 313 starts with them in 2023. It's a 2024 winning at 14%. So that's definitely one thing to bring up. And Jim Pillar's, of course, the man is here, and he says, among the merch I'm ordering it as a B&B polo. I think they look really sharp. They should check out highly recommend they should check out the store. Jim, thanks again for the kind words. I really appreciate it. And I agree with you, Matt. Buyer strikes me as a bit low. No concern on my part. The time form rating concerning my general sense. I completely agree with you. The fact that it's something I've developed in my handicapping over the past few months, is comparing these different figures and see how they stack up. We've seen discrepancies before, and we see them, work out in certain regards. So I definitely completely agree with you, Matt. And George Tyason's in the chat. I don't think I've seen your name before, George. Thanks so much for joining the show. And of course, Paul says, smash that like button. Absolutely, Paul. Hopefully we can get as many likes as we've seen in the past few shows, getting upwards of 50, 60, and 70. So hopefully everyone can smash that like button like Paul says. Guys, going to move on to race number 2, and you'll see the picks up. Going with 3 different horses again on top. And you don't see that very often. A lot of us, we handicap pretty similarly. So a lot of these, we usually come up with certain horses. But I'm interested to see, as I bring up the Equibase right now, is a full field of 12, a maiden special weight, 120,000, running 6 furlongs for 3-year-old maidens. Morning line favorite is a lukewarm favorite, the number 5, Run Jalen Run for Joe Sharp and BJ Hernandez. Second choice is the number 1 is Sir Otto, first timer for Asmussen, and of course your third choice is the other first time starter for Asmussen at 9-2, the number 2 Stroncino. So I'm gonna, like I said, the picks are on the screen right now, and we are all going other ways. Noah, I'll let you talk first, as Charlie talked first last time. You have the number 4, another bottle, and that's not a typo, folks. That's 20-1 on top. As we all know, Oaklawn can provide those prices, and Noah's going to go price shopping early. What'd you like most about another bottle?
Yeah, I knew I was going to be going first in this race. But when I looked at this field, I thought this was definitely a very difficult race.
Yeah.
And other than another bottle, there wasn't really any of the runners that had run before that really kind of stood out to me.
Completely agree.
So with the 4, just from an upside angle, this is a pretty well met horse for Diodoro. He runs quite a bit of his barn at Remington. So on the debut was the pretty heavy favorite, and didn't really do much running, and then in the second race really didn't do much at all as well. But just the fact that this horse has had some time off earlier in the year, had been working really well in Louisiana, which is probably where he's been at for the last couple months. And just the fact that Diodoro takes the time to geld, which we say is what the biggest equipment change in
ultimate equipment
horse racing. And you get Ramon Vasquez, who is a jockey I know very well. He's been in the California circuit for the last couple of years. Just the fact that he does that and he throws him into a maiden special weight that's worth $120,000. I think there's something that he sees. I think this horse has a little more ability than people kind of give him credit for. And like I said, I just really wasn't thrilled with anybody. It's very possible that one of the firsters could win this race, which you guys both have a firster on top, which makes a lot of sense. I could be completely off the reservation, but just one that I'd be interested in. And to your point, Kyle, on big days like this, you're going to get prices at Oaklawn, so maybe this could be one of them.
Yeah, no kidding. Charlie, you have as Noah touched on, you have the first Asmussen Arrowgate first-time starter, $475,000 for 3 chimneys. Number 1, Sir Otto. What'd you like most about him?
Yeah, we kind of talk about this when we do a lot of these maiden races with horses with little to no experience. I'm kind of always, the one out of us, I'd say, who most consistently kind of tries to go away from those with experience and kind of is obsessed with going with those who are new. And, for me, even more so in a race like this where it does seem wide open and where, like you and Noah kind of touched on, there really isn't anybody who's done anything to really move me. I think it speaks volumes that none of us have the morning line. I know it's a cold morning line favorite, but the fact that, for Joe Sharp, who's a solid trainer, and, with Brian Hernandez Jr., who's a great jockey there aboard, the fact that none of us have this horse anywhere, I think kind of more so speaks volumes about how wide open this race is than any specific knock on the 5. So for me, I just wanted to go the angle of going with some fresh faces that have upside. I like that the 1 and 2, they're both Asmussen trainees. This is where Asmussen does very well. Both of his horses are working forwardly. They're both clearly well meant when you look at a lot of the other horses in this field. And, Keith Asmussen's done really well here. Tyler obviously doesn't ride here. But again, anytime he's kind of picking up a mount here and he's coming over for a day like this, you have to pay attention. And I'm curious for you to kind of add on to it, Kyle. But again, for me, I just wanted to go with any firsters at upside, but I had the 6th and 3rd. And I'm curious what made you decide this horse on top. For me, again, another one where I just like the works and saw one working forward. What'd you kind of like about Mo Grande?
I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, the horse is working probably the most forward out of anyone in this field. You can see kind of a progressive, up and comer here. So you got 36 and 4 on December 10th, 50 and 2, and then 49 and 3, 49 and 2, 48 and 1, 48 and 3. So this horse has continued to get more fit, continued to work up to this first start. Randy Morris, who's had a pretty decent Oaklawn meet, is pretty good first time out, winning at 14%. And the Dam, a lot of skirt, was not a bad horse herself, winning a lot at Keeneland, Churchill, anywhere from, that 62 optional claiming, did run in the Fall City and did run in the Iowa Oaks. So a well-meant horse from Mark Cassidy back in the day. And In Awe was a horse who just ran at Gulfstream Park 2 weeks ago and ran a pretty decent 4th first time out, granted an optional claimer for George Weaver, but was bet down, was well-meant. Gaffleone picked up the ride. So I think Mo El Grande, with the work tab and the way, and Randy Morris obviously training first time out, shows he can get the job done. The Dam has produced some type of runners in the past. Torres picks up the mount. I think Mo El Grande could definitely be one to not necessarily upset, but definitely be in the mix at a middling price of 5-1. But no, I'll let you kind of finish up here. You have the number 2 in second. Charlie has him in second. I don't have him anywhere, but that's because I wanted to throw the 3 in there for reasons I can touch on in a sec. But this, the quote unquote other Asmussen has been down at Sam Houston these past few, obviously, where Asmussen runs a lot of his runners in the summer months. But what would you like most about Sean Zeno?
Yeah, Charlie kind of already touched on it. The 1 and the 2 are very similar. They're Asmussen's owned by 3 chimneys. I actually thought on Saturday, I thought the 2 had a little bit better of a chance to win on Saturday rather than the 1. I think the 1 could be a really nice horse down the line. Just, out of Arrowgate, Tappet Mare, just being on the rail. And I think the 2's faster just based off the works. So I've got respect for the 1. I don't know if he can necessarily win today, but I think the 1 could be a really nice horse. So that's why I kind of put the 2. I think Asmussen's a little more of a send guy, and Gaffleon is a little bit more of, hey, this is a really talented horse that could be good, in the future. Maybe I want you to hop on and see what he's got. And then as we'll touch on later with the best bets, I've also got the 6 involved for my horizontals. So, I think it's similar to you, Kyle, a horse that's, working well. Uncle Mo maybe a little bit longer, but Morse is definitely capable first out.
Yeah, definitely capable. And this is your spread race for me personally. And I'm sure I know you, I put in your bet into the banner. So I know you feel that same way as well. This is just one of those races that seems so unpredictable. I don't necessarily like too many, like Charlie touched on, too many runners coming back that have run before. I wanted to add someone in here with experience because obviously that helps a lot in this regard. I landed on number 3, Coach Jimmy D, for, of course, Jimmy DeVito, a longtime Illinois connection. This last race was keyed me in, losing to Normandy Hero, granted on a speed favoring Ellis track, but running that 7 furlongs, ran very evenly, cutting back just a little bit to where this horse was originally meant to be for DeVito. He's not very good off the long layoff, but if there's anyone with experience that has the ability for me to be able to win, it is the number 3, Coach Jimmy D. But it could be, like I said, I could be completely off the mark, but I do like a lot of these firsters in here. I think a lot of them are very well meant, could be very good horses in the future. I'm going 6-1-3. Charlie's going 1-2-6, and Noah's going 4-2-1. Guys, going to switch over to race number 3 here, as I'll switch over the Equibase right now. This is a field of 8. This is another maiden special weight for 6 furlongs. This is the filly version of the race we just covered. Filly's 3 years old, running 6 furlongs on the dirt for 120,000. This one only draws a field of 8. However, with a pretty decent morning line favorite is the number 3, Motown Dynamic for Gaffleon and Asmussen. Second choice is Cruise Missile for Christian Torres and Diodoro at 9-5, and Bang Bang Fury, Franklin Arietta at 7-2. And guys, I'm a little upset because I thought I was gonna have something really good, and I have my reasons of why I like this horse so much. And then you guys, granted, didn't put this horse on top like I did, but you also have this horse in the mix, the 12-1 Havaha for Castillo and Maker. But you guys both are going with the morning line favorite in here. Charlie, I'll let you talk first. The number 3, Motown Dynamic. Of course, again, Asmussen, extremely well-meant connections, and not to mention that last race, which was a very good one.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like what Noah started to touch on in the last race with why he liked the 2 is Asmussen kind of with these types of horses likes to have his horses send. And, that is something where I've been trying to pay more attention to Oaklawn lately to kind of just become more well-rounded at all tracks. And especially knowing that, again, there were going to be some big cards at Oaklawn coming up that we would probably have to cover. And yeah, I noticed there were plenty of times where he would have some of these horses with, 1 or 2 races of experience or first timers. And they all kind of tend to be horses that send and they tend to succeed. And, I kind of always touch on how I am someone who kind of leans more towards the stalkers and closers. And I completely understand the concerns that are valid that people would have about the other main choice in this race, the 7, who we all have in the mix is another speed horse. For me, honestly, I just like the opportunity for this horse to take the step forward second time out. I like that it's Asmussen and Gaffleon again. The horse ran a very, very solid effort on debut. Honestly, what just gave me the nod with the 3 over the 7 was just I feel that even though the 7 is improving, which is why I had to put the horse in second, because the horse is, taking a step forward with every effort. And I feel if this horse continues to, Cruise Missile could be dangerous. I just think there's more upside with Motown Dynamic, who again has only had 1 start and, certainly could end up freaking and have a great second time effort. I think this is certainly one of those races though, where you kind of either have to take a stand with one of those 2 if you're making a ticket and maybe go pretty short, or maybe kind of go with an angle, Kyle, where maybe you pick one of those 2 plus a long shot that you kind of feel confident in. And I'm curious what you like about the 2, because I know, again, Noah and I had talked a lot about this horse actually before the show, and I was pretty tempted to move the horse up because clearly you look at the purchase price and this horse is clearly well meant. It's a Maker horse. You always have to respect Michael Maker, very solid trainer. And I mean, the works were obviously solid, but then you see that 47-3, which is just absurd. And for me, I mean, again, we have to see. I know it's a horse that you're certainly always going to say you have to watch the board, but I would be very shocked if that horse is not single digits come race day.
I'll tell you what. I'll talk about Cruise or Noah. If you want to talk about Cruise Missile real quick, anything you want to touch on, then obviously I'll go over why I like what I like most about the two, and I'll let you guys piggyback off of that since we have the same 3 horses, and we'll move on. But Cruise Missile is another one. Diodoro, obviously trained this horse before, trained to Sean Williams, who I believe is his assistant or former assistant. Now comes back to Diodoro, getting Torres back up for the 5th time in a row. I mean, this horse just makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Cruise Missile was a very soft 3rd pick for me. In terms of strategizing in this race, I'm quite against the 7 in here.
Okay.
I just think the 3 is completely faster. And I think the 7 is she's pretty much a need the lead type, and she hasn't gotten it done in 4 starts. I mean, you could make the case that she's improving. And last time she was in some red numbers, but they still went almost 47 for the half. So I just think if the 3 breaks, I think the 3 is just a faster horse. And I don't really see the 7 kind of sitting off and going by and then holding off others. In terms of those others, it could be the 2, it could be the 5, it could be some others in here. There's just some wild cards. That's kind of why I like the 2. I mean, obviously the work is, hard to ignore. And I'm sure, Kyle, you've got some breeding stats that you like a little bit, which, yeah, I'm sure you were interested in that too.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Charlie, to your point, there's no way this horse is 12-1. I promise you that. There's no way in hell that this horse is going to be double digits. If it is, we could be very interesting. Look, I know Maker's not that bad, not that good first time out, and I completely understand that. But there's a few things of why I really, really like this horse on top. You see the work tab. The work tab makes a whole lot of sense for a horse like this. Then you pair it with Maker. Granted, has Castillo, but look at Castillo's numbers. If he's 5, he hasn't run too much at Oaklawn so far this year, but he's 5 for 18. You go to Hansen, only 35, 3-year-old and up first-time starters, but he's 7 for 35. He's winning a 5th of the time with first-time starters. Then this is what really turned me on to this horse. The Havisham Bernardini mare. You go down to this tab, total race record, 101 buyer. Who the hell is this horse by? Or who the Serengeti Empress ring a bell to anybody? This horse is a half to Serengeti Empress, one of the best distaffers in that 2018-2020 range. I mean, like I said, you want to talk about a horse that's definitely not going to be 12-1 based on everything I just said. This is going to be your the nail in the coffin for this horse. She's probably going to be somewhere around 6 to 8-1 is my guess. I think both Cruise Missile and the 3 are going to take a lot of money, but Havaha is going to take a pretty decent amount of money. But seeing that this horse is half to Serengeti Empress, who is also by alternation, so she wasn't by a very good, he said, a top stallion per se in her own right. But Hansen wins a lot first time out. As horses continue to get older, the work tab speaks for itself. I'm very, very interested in Havaha, whether on top or underneath or going forward. I just think she can be a very good runner, and maybe not as good as the 3 right now, but I think definitely has to be respected in a maiden field like this where anything can happen. But other than that, guys, I mean, obviously you have Belle the Bluegrass for Rally Mod, fantastic name. Work tab is pretty good. Midshipman's not too great first time out, so I was looking other places. Michael Lauer, those first 2 races in Indiana don't really do a whole lot for me at all. Bang Bang Fury was the one I kind of left out. This is a horse that likes to come from mid-pack, so if they go fast early, the number 5 Bang Bang Fury might be one to pick up the pieces, but just really hasn't been able to get it done. The closest did have a little bit of red numbers, but they had to go 21-3 in the opening for 6 furlongs to be able to get anywhere done. But I mean, look at these West Sunset, West Omaha, pun intended, Midshipman's Dance. This horse is coming out of a lot of very live races. So Bing Bang Fury might be in there. Another first-time starter for Raleigh Mott, who didn't really do it for me too much, but Vino Bello could be one. This is just a really open race, guys. I mean, there's a lot of good horses in this field and definitely could take a step forward if they show. I'm going 2-7-3. Charlie's going 3-7-2. Noah's going 3-7. We're going to move on to race number 4, guys. And this is the only other non-maiden race that we're covering in this sequence. And I'll switch over to the Equibase right now. It's a field of 12. It is for 150,000 going again for 6 furlongs for older horses. And it, again, full field of 12. Morning line favorite is another lukewarm 7-2. Unraptured for Asmussen and William Morley. Second, Gunflash at 4-1 for Christian Torres and Carl Broberg. Third choice is number 11, Favorite Outlaw for Hartman. And I'll bring up the picks right now, guys. And you both are going with the number 1, Breslau, which I was very interested to see when I put these picks in. I have the number 2, Gunflash on top. And I will preface, actually, I'll preface it later, but this is probably my most default, not kind of wishy-washy opinion on top in the entire card. But Noah, I'll go to you. Or no, Charlie, I'll go to you first because Noah, you had the 20-1 on top last race. Or was it last race? No.
That was 2 races ago. I'll go.
No, we'll go first. So what'd you like most about Breslau?
Yeah, so I'm sure you're going to want to bring up the time form in this race because there is a hell of a lot of speed in here. I think I counted either 7 or 8 horses with a time form of over 100. So I mean, you're just begging, to have somebody close into a pace like this. And with the 1, if you go to the PPs, the 1 is one that's he's got a 105 time form. But I think his better races are sitting just off the pace. You go back to his couple races at Indy. He got an 81 where he was a length off the lead, lengthed 2 lengths off in the second race in Indy where he popped 81s and 86s. And then the races, late summer and early fall, he looked like he was kind of tailing off. He looked like he kind of really didn't want to run anymore. And then he comes to Oaklawn and he just finds what he had. And again, he's sitting off, granted a hot pace, but he runs a nice 80. Last time he was on the lead, which I don't really know if that's what he prefers. Still ran a nice race, running 84. Claimed by Steve Hobby, who had a really nice year last year. He's not necessarily as great off the claim. But just the fact that he claims his horse for 50 and now he's running protected in a race that's $150,000 purse wise. And the fact that, the horse is going to sit off of, I don't know who's going to go out of the 6 or 7 that can. But whoever it is, they're going to have a hell of a hard time, staying there. And I think the 1 is one of the few that can, be a little more tactical and go by. So that was kind of my thinking there.
Charlie, you also have this horse on top. Kind of piggyback off of what Noah said. What'd you like about Breslau?
Yeah, Noah kind of touched on all my main points. I mean, I think for me, it all kind of starts with, again, what you showed at the beginning with the pace. I mean, for me, and I know we always talk about this, how you see those certain races where you're like, oh, everybody's going to go, this has to be a pace meltdown, and then somehow it doesn't, and they somehow end up walking when everybody
If this race is a pace meltdown, brother, I got
Oh, no, agreed. And that's what I'm saying.
I might just stop, take a break.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's what I'm saying. And if you look at all of our picks, we all went with horses that are going to be not pretty far back, but in the back half. And for me, I kind of saw what Noah was seeing and what the time form kind of represented. I think the most logical, the horse seems to have refigured things out. Again, for a horse to be in for the claim for 50 and protected now seems that they also believe in the horse. The horse also has a really nice clip at Oaklawn. 3 wins in a second and 7 starts is nice to see. And again, I just think this horse is going to sit a ground-saving trip on the rail, be just off the speed and get the first jump. I think the last race and the time form early pace would be a little misleading because normally, you see 105 and you're assuming send. But honestly, in this kind of race, the horse doesn't have to. But I'll tell you what, and we'll get to best bets later, but the horse that intrigues me the most in this race is the number 4. What I really like about the 4 efficiency is, again, I just think this race is going to be a complete and utter pace meltdown. I think that's the exact kind of, setup that this horse is going to need to have any chance. I don't know if you'll get 12-1 because I have a feeling it's not even for me from the connections angle. It's more so I just feel like there's got to be somebody else who also, I get that would be a knock, but I feel like somebody's also going to see the angle of look, everybody's going to send. So this is the one of the only clear closers in this race. So this horse could get up. For me, I absolutely think this is an underneath play. I think this horse, if it's a complete and utter meltdown, could honestly surprise and win. I think the figures are there to make it possible. But at the very least, and I see you have the same belief, Kyle, having this horse in third, I absolutely think this horse can come second or third. And again, with there not being any heavy favorites, I think this is a great race, for the horizontals to make some money if you think it's wide open. But even if you play this race on its own, if there's, a horse that's one of those top 3 choices in like that 4 to 6 to 1 range, and you're looking to hit a big exacta bet, this is certainly the race to do it. And then I'll let you talk more on the 2, Kyle. For me, the reason I put the horse in third is I just feel like this horse has gotten chances, before to have setups to get the job done in these last 2 and hasn't been able to. And I understand, Spen Benjamins, which is a horse we covered and I gave out to win, is a talented horse. And I think Gunflash is talented. It's just for me, and again, I know you said this is one of the wishy-washy ones. I just don't love the value at 4 to 1 for me. I would rather look elsewhere in a race that's this wide open and get a little more value. But I still think from a setup and a talent perspective, this horse absolutely could win.
Yeah, and look, like I said at the to preface this race, this is probably my weakest pick on the card, like just straight up to win. So I wouldn't necessarily play this race base. If I was to play pick 5, we talk about structure and all that. It would probably be 2 horses by spread, by single, by spread, or by 2 horses by spread, by single. Is probably the way I would play this. And Gunflash is just one of those horses, like you said, Charlie. It's kind of gotten a setup. I really don't think this horse likes to slop. Just the way this horse runs has ran in both of his slop races, that being the last time at Oaklawn, which obviously if the race does come up weather induced, that would take me to knock this horse down a few pegs. And this race at Ellis Park, you see, he just puts himself out of the race if it's on a sloppy track. So I'm more looking to these races on fast tracks. So like this closing effort might be good enough. We talked about Spen Benjamins, also Bohemian Bo, who also came back to win the race after finishing second in that race. So Gunflash for me on a fast track might have a really good chance to bring this home. The fact that there is so much pace in this race. You touched on the 4, Charlie. I completely agree with you. I'm just worried about the kind of class angle for this horse. That's why I have this horse in third. The pace does melt down. I would definitely want to have efficiency on there. But a trainer who is 1 for 28 in 2023, coming from a 12-5 claimer basically at Oaklawn, then putting up the starter allowances, ran very well, granted at 24 to 1, and now is going to have to take another step forward in a better class structure. It might just be too much for this horse, but at 12 to 1, I definitely would be interested, especially underneath on the 4. And I have the 6. Noah, I'll let you touch on anything you want to touch on, then we'll move on about the 6 Lake Radio. This, again, another kind of pace angle, but also a class angle. I didn't want to have this horse on top. Granted, Matt Shire is having, another amazing Oaklawn meet. This horse is also entered on Friday at Oaklawn, so obviously take a look at Friday's card and see if this horse does run. If he does run, I don't think he's going to be running back-to-back days. But this horse has run into hot paces before, has been able to get the job done behind a really nice horse in Jackman. So, no, I think, like I said, for me, it was kind of a pace play. And second, just based on class angle, is that kind of the way you felt, or did you go a different way?
Yeah, no, you pretty much touched on what I kind of had on Lake Radio. I just thought the last race was really good. You touched on it. Jackman came back and won. I think Jackman ended up being the 4, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. But from a visual standpoint, I just was really impressed with that, and I think the 6 can kind of sit a similar trip to the 1. I just thought the 6 was a little more skeptical in terms of passing horses. But if the 6 does run in this race instead of the next day, Shire is very capable, and I think this horse can definitely be a contender. There's a lot of different ways you can go in this race.
Yeah, and I'll touch on him real quick before we move on. The number 8, Unraptured, for fresh off the trainer switch for William Morley. We've been running at Golden Gate at Pleasanton, so all over the West Coast. Has run well in the dirt before. You're just is this a little bit of a step up for Unraptured, but obviously respected at the 7-2 morning line, but also factors to be in. Only a 94 time for him, but this horse really does its better running on the lead. So I'm interested to see what the trip kind of shapes up for Unraptured, which is why I inevitably didn't add him in my top 3. And then favorite outlaw is 9-2 on the morning line with a bug on for Chris Hartman. And this horse is just completely going to be pace scenario. This horse is going to have to go. I don't like the 11 post for the same reason why I love the 8 horse in the next race. I think this horse is going to be super wide on the first turn, especially with a lot of speed right to his inside. I'm completely against favorite outlaw in this race, although he has numbers to win. I'm going 2-6-4. Charlie's going 1-4-2. Noah's going 1-6-2. Guys, going to switch over to the last race, but Paul Conlon does bring up a good. Lake Radio is 0-for-7 at Oaklawn, which is obviously a very necessary thing. He is 4-for-7 in the money, which is also another reason why I like the horse underneath. But that's obviously a very fair point to bring up about Lake Radio. Going to switch over last race, guys. Another maiden special weight draws a full field of 11. This is another 3-year-old fillies race. And this one, like I said, draws field of 11, but this one's going a mile and a 16th. So a little bit longer on the card. And I'll switch over the picks right now. And Noah, you and I are both going with the morning line favorite, the number 8, Enigmatic for Christian Torres and Brad Cox. Charlie's going with the number 11, My Favorite Girl for Esquivel and Kenny McPeak as your second choice. And the third choice, second choice, right? Yeah. And then third choice is shared between 3 different 8-to-1s, the 5, the 6, and the 9. And I'll switch over to the PPs right now. But Charlie, you're going to go first, my friend. The number 11, My Favorite Girl, again, for Esquivel and McPeak. This is one that, in a race that I didn't necessarily see a lot of speed in the race, but this horse is definitely going to be flying from the clouds.
Yeah, and that was honestly just my angle. I mean, look, I feel like for me, it's very clearly a 2-horse race between the 8 and the 11. I just like that there's a little more value, that this horse is, continuing to take steps forward. I also just like that the horse, kind of has had, after making the switch to Oaklawn and back-to-back races, is kind of taken that step in improvement. Obviously, McPeak's been obviously bouncing back and doing a great job here. There's also the consistency with the, the jockey. I know that doesn't mean too much, but I certainly don't think it hurts. And again, I always talk about this. I prefer my stalkers and closers, especially in these longer races. And while I agree with you, I don't think there's a ton of pace. I still think, the 10 to the just inside is going to go. The 8's obviously going to go. I know more towards the inside, there isn't that much speed. Like the 3 will probably, maybe try to go, but probably isn't fast enough. So I very realistically think this could just end up being one of those races where the 8 just ends up wiring the field, and I just look dumb for not putting the horse on top. But again, I just want to take the chance. And, I also kind of figured maybe, obviously we'd have to see what happens, but maybe if this horse can just sit a little bit closer, like the horse did on debut, where the horse was, like 2-3 lengths off the lead, then I think My Favorite Girl would have a real shot. But I do agree with you, Kyle. I think if this horse does kind of take too far back and has to try to close on the clouds, it probably sets up too nice from the 8. And no, I'm kind of guessing that was your angle as well, as it just made a little more sense to go with the horse that likely won't have as much to do going late.
Yeah, to my point, Kyle's point. On the debut, she did get the lead. That was on turf at Kentucky Downs. But I just think from a tactical standpoint, she just seems faster than this group.
Yeah,
I think I'll
tell you that much. Sorry to cut you off real quick, but I'll show this. There's a reason why that form looks so dirtied up, and I'll show you. She's in the 12 gate right here, about to load in, last in, first out. And as soon as they let go of the gate, and nope, goes straight to her knees, and she's going to try and rush up here, and I'll skip ahead right here. Someone want to tell me what's wrong with that picture? For a horse that likes to be towards the front, went to her knees out of the gate, and she's parking lot wide on the first turn. So I think, Noah, that's kind of where that form a little bit dirties up. But so to your point, I completely agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought the post compromised that definitely a little bit. And I thought once she kind of got to that point in the race, she was kind of due for a dud. It's not really what she kind of wants to do. But I just thought 2 back, if she posts that number again, if she posts that effort, I think she's pretty much a horse to beat. She's going to be pretty tough.
I couldn't agree more with you. I think this horse is just going to send. I think Cox is going to really tell Torres, look, there's not too many horses in this race that want to pass. There's not too many horses in this race that want to go to the lead. Just especially with the blinkers on, I think that's going to be a very worthwhile change. You saw in the gate, she was a little bit goofy. looking around everywhere. I think the blinkers on is going to be a very nice change for this horse. And I think Enigmatic's just going to take the lead and never look back. Probably, in my opinion, at least my strongest opinion through this main early pick 5 sequence. So Charlie, I'll let you touch on anything you want to touch on. You obviously you touched on the 8 a little bit. Anything you want to piggyback off of, and then you have the number 5, Pepper's Girlfriend, in third, and then throw it to Noah, and then we'll move on to best bets.
No, I think you guys covered it well. Honestly, my angle with the 5 is, and I'm curious what you guys think, because I know nobody else has the 5, but I'm curious if you kind of see this as well. It's kind of easier, Kyle, if you could pull up the time form to just show it real quick. My angle strictly on the 5 was just, I mean, look, clearly from an odds perspective, this is going to be a 2-horse race, the one that's going to be closing all the way in the back like the 11, or is the 8 going to get away? But my only angle with the 5 is you can kind of see the horse in theory should be able to sit a really nice trip just off the speed. So my kind of angle was, even if it's not a fast enough pace, this horse should still be within striking distance. And again, with these more, like inexperienced early on horses, you never know. A horse could they could just decide, you know what, it's some long shot bomb. Why not try to send? And that could make things complicated for the 8. But again, the 11 could still end up having too much to do. And I don't think the 11 is the greatest post position. So I just thought from a trip standpoint, the 5 could at least be interesting and at least have a chance in this spot. And again, in case something does work out more favorable and, either the 8 gets pressed a little too much or the 11 has too much ground and is too wide, I just thought the 5 could be the horse that capitalizes if either or both of the favorites struggle.
I mean, look, I don't disagree. I think underneath the 8, you can go a lot of different ways, obviously, in a race like this where we have a lot of these, especially 3-year-old filly maidens. As again, I touched on it. I gave a joke to the boss man on Monday on Horsin Around. It's his favorite division to handicap, being the 3-year-old fillies. But other than the 8, I really, maybe the number 6, Happy Talk for the coach, I think is a little bit under-repped. Has the best time form figure in the entire race with a 90, sitting at 8-1 morning line, looks to sit that same type of trip as the 5, as Pepper's Girlfriend, as you touched on, Charlie. So maybe the 6 is one, but I really just think if the 8 loads in, breaks well with the equipment change, I really think that she's just going to go the lead and really never, or hopefully never, look back. But I'm going 8, 11, 6. Charlie's going 8, 11, 8, 5. I've done that 3 races in a row now where I read Noah's name first, even though I'm looking at Charlie's name. 11, 8, 5 for Charlie, and Noah's going 8, 9, 10. Guys, going to switch over to best bets here, and thank you guys all so much for watching. Like I said, really appreciate it. Before we get to best bets, please remember to smash that like button. It really helps us out. There's 2 reallys for you. I even threw those in there for you guys, but it does help us out a lot. It's the best way to support our channel. And also, while you're down in the description, please check out the HHH Racing Podcast merch store, guys. HHHRacingPodcast.com can take you there, or it is the top link in the description. This is open through March 3rd. And if Sierra Leone's wins the Kentucky Derby, guys, your first $50 is free. No matter what you order on here, no matter how many things you order, it is your first $50 is free if Sierra Leone wins the Derby. Really high quality stuff here, guys. I'm very proud of the designs and everything that we put out, such as our slogan, Boozin and Not Losin, on the back of both the hoodies and the t-shirts. I'm really just super excited, guys. I'm super glad how they turned out. And like I said, I might break the bank a little bit ordering, obviously it's our stuff, but I might break the bank a little bit ordering the merch. Top link in the description if you want to go buy yourself either some B&B merch or some HHH Racing Podcast merch. But we'll move on to best bets here. Noah, I'll let you go first because you gave a little bit of style. You are more of a horizontal player, and on this show, I feel like, especially for a younger audience, I feel like it's a lot easier to approach these cards, kind of split them out, play your 2 best opinions on the entire card. You can play them for whatever dollar amount you want or whatever stuff like that. But Noah is going with pick 5, albeit a very cheap pick 5. And Noah, you're kind of following that same exact thing that I said, except you spread a little bit more in the last race than the 4th race. But again, it's all based on the strongness of opinions. So Noah's early pick 5 is going 4-6 with 1-2-4-6, singling the number 3, which is Motown Dynamic, who we talked about a lot, with 1-6 with 8, 9, 10. Only a $24 ticket. Noah, talk about your pick 5.
Yeah, I'll try to rattle off through this pretty quickly, but I want to change it up a little bit, but also make it affordable so that people that have the same budget as myself don't have to, spend a huge ticket and see if they can, hit a sequential bet. But in the first leg, I went with 4-6. I had the 7 and third as well, but I was a little bit against that. That's the 7 that Kyle likes. So it seems like a race where you either have to go 1 or 2 and kind of see if you can get through that one. And the second race, obviously, we touched on was the spread. I've got the 3 firsters and then the bomb for Diodora that I liked a little bit. And the third race, I'm just going with the 3. It's nothing creative, but I think she's just the fastest in the race. And I think the 7's the only one that's going to take money, and the 2 is the one that could definitely take money too. But I'm kind of hoping those 2 take money, and the 3's just better than the rest of them. In the fourth race, I wish I could use quite a few more. But I tried to make the ticket a little more reasonable, so I just went with the 1 and the 6. Obviously, if the 6 doesn't run, I might include the 2 or the 4 or somebody else that I think could benefit from that pace meltdown. And then in the last, as much as I wanted to single the 8, she just is a little hard to trust. So I went with the 9 and the 10, who I didn't really get to touch on, but just 2 of them that had a little more upside. The 9 was McPeak and BJ again. Second time, thought she had a little more trouble, and it says in the form she kind of broke slow and climbed a little bit. And then the 10 was for Asmussen, who Gaffleon hops on. That horse is 15-1 and stretching out. Second time for his barn, who's probably not going to be 15-1. But anyway, I just thought the 8, even though she's going to be a pretty heavy price, I feel like betting a sequential bet like this. A lot of people, they try and single the first and the last, especially with favorites. So if you can beat the favorites in either of those legs, then it's going to make it a little more, bang for your buck. Well, so that's kind of what I went with.
And racing downwind, this pick 5 could pay. I mean, like we talked about, this is a really good betting sequence, guys. There's a lot of different ways you can go. So good luck with your pick 5. Charlie, I go to you. Race number 4. You like the number 4 underneath, who we talked about at length. That is the horse in that really fast pace, number 4 efficiency at 12-1 morning line. And in race number 11, we were going to touch on Rebel picks at the end, but a little bit of foreshadowing here. Race 11 in the Rebel going exact to 7 over 6-11. Charlie, talk about your best bets.
Yeah, so we touched on earlier. Again, I think this race will be a pace meltdown, and like you said, Kyle, like if we have to reevaluate the sport entirely and we're wrong and there is no pace meltdown and they somehow walk when everybody else in their career is sent based off of this field, then I'm fine with being wrong. But yeah, I would do the boss man's favorite bet that he's been begging me to try one day or advertise, and I hope he's seeing this. But yeah, we're going with efficiency and a reverse tri-key. I just think this horse, could the horse win? Possibly, but I think at the very least, again, from a pace standpoint, as a double-digit horse, certainly should be able to get up into the money. I get we touched on that the trainer stats aren't great, but you did see in the very small segment that I think the horses, like the trainer's horses, have actually finished in the money at an okay clip, just not win, which, again, you don't need the horse to win in a reverse tri-key. And then, yeah, for the next race, we'll talk about it in a moment. I mean, look, Timberlake is obviously going to be the horse to beat. I think a lot of these horses that are coming back that ran at Oaklawn before really didn't do anything for me, but I'm also not going to play Timberlake at 6-5. And, we kind of touch on in these races before where, it's these big races that you want to play, but you got to find value to make it worth your while to play. So if you're going to play this race, vertically on its own rather than horizontally, maybe if you feel strong enough about Timberlake, you single the horse on a ticket. But if you're playing it vertically, I would never bet that horse straight up 6-5. So I figured I'd go with the other 2 horses that I'm interested in that race to bring some value in the exactas. Just Steel, who for me, I thought was still pretty impressive. For me, outside of Mystic Dan, who obviously won that race, I thought Liberal Arts and Just Steel looked good in that race. Those are the only horses I would ever want to play back. And then Dematic, the 6, is kind of a wild card in that race, but I just like that it's a fresh face. It's Gaffleon and Asmussen. I think if that horse, who's a gun runner, which I also think makes the horse interesting, could take a step forward, could pay nicely underneath.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie, good luck with yours. This was, like I said, this was a little bit hard for me to narrow down because, you guys know I love to play doubles. And I couldn't really sequentially pick 2 races in a row that I felt that strongly about. So I ended up actually going, probably the first time I've ever done this, I actually ended up going with an exacta as one of my best bets. And it's in race number 1, it's the number 7 Blown Cover. Trying to toss out Imperial Gun, it might be completely naive of me, but Blown Cover over Seize the Gray, I think, is one that could possibly hit if the speed does go too fast and the 4 ends up backing up, which is who's a mid-pack horse that might be able to take second from all these other horses, the 6 might just have way too much to do. So I'm taking number 5, Seize the Gray, in second. That's blown cover over Seize the Gray in race number 1. And in race 4, guys, this is the double. And I said race 4 wasn't necessarily my strongest opinion, but I feel like with Gunflash and Lake Radio, I feel like that covers the race pretty well from just a type of not really favorite standpoint, but from a middling price standpoint where you'll be able to get value no matter which way you go. If the doubles are paying a little bit more, you might even be able to add more horses in there. Because let's say you want to make like $150 in the race, then you do $50 worth of doubles, and you can play a certain amount of horses, all to get you at different dollar amounts, all to get you to that that $200 mark, which would make you $150. There's so many different ways you can go with the double, and that's why it's my favorite way to bet. So I'm going Gunflash and Lake Radio, and my strongest opinion, as I touched on, singling the number 8 Enigmatic, who I think is just going to go to the lead and not look back. So guys, that is our best bets, but don't go anywhere. I mean, we're not going to cover analysis. If you guys want analysis of the Rebel, please tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern on the HHH Racing Podcast channel. That is Thursday, February 22nd for Picks and Ponies episode 334. They're going to cover the entire Late Pick 5 in complete detail. So if you want a very strong overview and analysis of the Rebel Stakes, please tune in tomorrow, Thursday night, for Picks and Ponies. But we are going to give our Rebel picks on this show. So Charlie, like I said, very quick analysis, like 15, 20 seconds. You had a Timberlake on top of the exactas. I assume that's who you're going to go with.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Timberlake again. I like the Invader kind of coming over against a lot of these horses who ran at Oaklawn. As I touched on, I like Just Steel a lot underneath. I think the horse ran a very respectable race and was able to kind of stay up, which was a big positive for me because a lot of the other speed wasn't really able to hold up. And then again, as I touched on, I think Dematic, who's a horse that trained by Asmussen, Gaffley on riding, has made very solid improvements in each effort, and I think the horse could take another step forward. Absolutely is one of the less experienced horses. And I also just think, again, being a gun runner horse and also from a pace perspective could set a nice trip by sitting a little bit off some of these other speed horses. So yeah, I'd say that's my top 3 would be 7, 11, 6.
Noah?
Yeah, I ended up going 7, 9, 6. I've got Timberlake on top. I mean, if he's ready to go, which Cox, it seems like he is, I think he's going to handle this field pretty well. I've actually got the 9 in second. I think Laganos is a little interesting underneath, just because I think Just Steel and the 6 Dimatic. If people are going to try and kind of key in on those exactas like Charlie's doing, so if you can find a horse that's a decent price, you get a little more value there. I think Laganos, I mean, he was 7-2 in the Smarty Jones, so he was liked quite a bit by the public. I thought he was part of a pretty decent pace, and I think he's a little more versatile. And then I got Dimatic in third, who Charlie touched on, but another horse that can kind of set off the pace. I think it's going to be a pretty decent pace. Just another one from Asmussen that looks to be improving. So I went with those 3, 7, 9, 6.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys. I'm not going to make it a trio. I did not go with Timberlake on top, which, again, could be completely naive. Look, Timberlake's easily the most likely winner of that field. I went with the number 6. I went with Dimatic, guys. And real quick, I want to show this replay, and I'll let the boys show it too. I'm going to show the last 15 seconds of this replay. And look how this horse is absolutely powering past. And then watch this. Watch this. Like, he spooks on something. He goes out that way, in that way. The tire tracks, I think, spooked him, and then he gets spooked again, like right towards the wire, right there again. So it's like, dude, this horse is so goofy, but you can tell how much talent is in that horse. I'm going with number 6, Dimatic on top. Timberlake in second, Just Steel in third. Nothing creative behind. Definitely the other 2 most likely winners. Timberlake being the most likely winner, but I really think there's a lot of talent in the number 6, Dimatic. So that's who I'm going to go with on top at a morning line price of 8-1. But that is going to be it for episode 62, guys. Thank you guys all for joining again. Remember to smash that like button and check out that merch store. We worked very hard on it. It's open until March 3rd. Please go check out that and get yourself a Bettin N Boozin t-shirt or hat. And if you do and you get it delivered, please tweet it at us. My Twitter's right here at AP Roscoe K, where you can find all my picks and analysis as well. But also, please tweet it at us. We would love to see you guys wearing the B&B merch. But Jim Pillars brings up a good idea, and this stuff will end the show. Dutching bets on how to do that would make for a nice future topic on the show. I completely agree, because that's something that a lot of people, when I say that's one thing that I really like to do is, I set a dollar amount, how much I want to make on the race, and I can mitigate risk based on, what horses I think, what the prices are and what horses I need to be able to get to that dollar amount. I think that's a good point on that show. And Matt brought up a show. He said, gonna embarrass myself, but his contest play this weekend was solid. I talked about it in complete detail on Hawthorne's Twitter account in their spaces yesterday. I was invited on. If you guys want to check that out, that's at Club Hawthorne on Twitter. But I was talking about mitigating risk. In race 10 was my biggest opinion on the entire day was best actor. Second, to stay hot. I thought the maiden race and race 9 before my double play was only a 2-horse race between Cornishman and Antiquarian. I ended up playing doubles and pick 3s with both the 6 and the 10. I think it was a $50 double with the 10, a $20 double with the 7 into the horse that scared me in the turf race. So my entire bet was going to be a double with 3, an all-in double with 3, which is Creative Cairo at Best Actor, then 5-3, which was Spirit and Glory at Best Actor. Spirit and Glory, of course, ended up winning, but I was scared of the 7, who actually the boss Howard had on top. I think it was like Spirit Wind or something along those lines. So I now have Antiquarian won the race. So now I have 3 horses that I'm alive to, just if I bet those doubles, and 2 in the contest, 1 in cash. But I was like, what do I need to get paid if I want to bust this tournament right now? And that number was $2,000. So that double paid $2,000. Then I had a $50 pick 3 that I used both the 6 and the 10 with 8, who was not so close, who could have wired the field. So it was 6-10 with 8, then with best actors. So still trying to capitalize on that opinion. So then instead of only 2 horses that I'm alive to in the turf race, I'm now alive to 4 horses with my best opinion still coming. Of course, best actor lost by a head and Stay Hot wins. So if best actor ends up getting above on that, a head past of money supply in that race, that's ending up, that's $8,000 that sadly did not come to fruition, but I still thought my play was very good. So just a little bit of explanation there on what Matt brought up earlier in the chat. But guys, that is going to end our discussion of the Oaklawn Early Pick 5 for Rebel Stakes Day, which is February 24th, 2024. But guys, for my co-hosts, Noah Maher and Charlie Freeman, has been Kyle Roscoe in episode number 62 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And until next time, everyone, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. Have a great night.